It's the gift that keeps on giving, but is this finally a Brexit breakthrough? It certainly looks as if the EU might have made significant concessions on the vexed issue of Northern Ireland.
We have put a lot of hard work into this package. We explored every possible angle of the protocol and at times went beyond current EU law.
But to absolutely no one's surprise, the British government seemed less sure. So what does it all mean? We'll try and make sense of it tonight. Also on a packed News at 10. We really could run out of gas this winter. A chilling warning from the man who runs many of our gas and oil rigs. In the last hour, police in Norway confirmed several people have been shot dead by a man with a bow and arrow. Cadbury's chocolate, Country Life butter, the everyday items amongst those linked to devastating deforestation in Brazil, a special report. Squid Game, more than 100 million watch Netflix's big hit in a month. How streaming is changing the shape of the entertainment world.
I'm so filled with emotion about what just happened.
And aged 90, Captain Kirk really does cross the final frontier.
This is ITV News at 10 with Tom Bradby.
Good evening. We begin tonight with all of our favourite subject, yes, Brexit. Wasn't it all decided ages ago, you may say? Here we are, 5 years after the vote, and the two sides have been arguing all over again about the most contentious part of a deal that they've both agreed once already. That is, of course, the trade arrangements between Great Britain and Northern Ireland, which have meant checks and delays and even the cancellation of shipments moving across the Irish Sea. Well, today the EU did offer concessions. Some of those checks, most of them in fact, could be done away with. What they have not agreed to, though, is the UK's demand to remove the European Court of Justice as the referee in any trade disputes, which might mean the UK won't accept the EU's latest offer, all of which leaves us with $1 million question. Will we still be talking about this in 10 years' time? Well, who knows, but Peter has a go at providing an answer.
Brexit Britain is just across this Irish Sea, but from here, that now looks like a foreign country. Northern Ireland is in the UK, but the so-called protocol separates it with an effective border here at the seaport. Goods coming in, like eggs, meat and medicine, are stopped for checks.
To be honest, it has been 10 months of stress and pressure.
It was the protocol that helped secure Brexit, but it hits hauliers here so hard, the UK government is now leaning on the EU to renegotiate.
I think that Boris Johnson needs to make movements between GB and Northern Ireland the same as movements between England and Scotland and England and Wales. He needs to protect the supply chain both ways across the Irish Sea.
This lorry is being loaded up in Northern Ireland to head to Britain tonight, a journey that only requires 2 pages of paperwork. By contrast, the same lorry coming the other way this morning needed more than 200 pages. This is what the protocol is doing to businesses in Northern Ireland, costing them money and time. The Brexit deal keeps Northern Ireland in the EU's single market while the rest of the UK is out, but that also keeps Northern Ireland under EU law within the European Court of Justice. Today the EU published the concessions they are willing to consider, reducing customs stops by 80%, but there is to be no compromise on the courts.
We have put a lot of hard work into this package. We explored every possible angle of the protocol and at times went beyond current EU law. In effect, we are proposing an alternative model for implementation of the protocol.
This isn't just about business in Northern Ireland. The protocol threatens a British identity here that has been fiercely defended for a century now, with defiance and violence.
So we need to find a solution everybody can get behind, and that means looking at some of the fundamentals. It means we need to get to a solution of significant change. We negotiated to find a result, to get an agreement.
The EU and UK government both signed up to this protocol though. It now threatens peace and increases costs for businesses like this farm near Corrie. But something had to be sacrificed to get a deal across the line, and that honour has fallen on Northern Ireland.
It is people's livelihoods and businesses that are at stake, and politicians are, dare I say, playing with those.
If the EU's concessions are agreed, it will open the door to more trade and British meats returning to Northern Irish plates. But for many here, this is not about food. It is the principle of the protocol that will always be too difficult to swallow.
And Peter joins me now from Belfast. Peter, we have discussed this so many times, but as we just saw in your report there, it means a huge amount to many people. Is this the breakthrough people are hoping for, do you think?
Well, Tom, it is a breakthrough of sorts, certainly for the business community. It will improve matters, not necessarily resolving all of the problems, but once again we're seeing the sticking point in getting deals across the line comes in Northern Ireland, specifically about where in Ireland there should be a border between the UK and the EU, and should there be a border at all. And now, one of the key parts here to remember is that the EU doesn't see this as tinkering around the edges. They see this as getting to the absolute core, almost renegotiating something that was already agreed on, and they see that as a big deal. They are now bending to the point that they say they're almost breaking, but then the UK's perspective on this is saying this isn't about trade, this is about governance. We can't tolerate having a part of the UK under the jurisdiction of the the European Court of Justice. And then we're hearing from people in Northern Ireland who are leading these demonstrations saying this isn't about making the protocol work, it's about obliterating it. So when we're talking about governance and identity in Northern Ireland, that really matters.
OK, Peter, thank you very much indeed. Well, let's move on to supply and demand problems now affecting the whole of the UK. A potential gas shortage as global industries get going again. Tonight, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, the boss of the INEOS empire, which includes gas, oil and refineries, has told Robert on his Peston programme that the UK could run out of gas this winter.
We don't have enough storage of gas, and therefore if you had a real sharp winter, very cold temperatures, we could run out.
Yeah, in which case then, what you would do is you'd shut down industry.
Which would be a catastrophe.
Economically, I mean, we're in a bad place as it is. That's COVID, so you don't really need to be shutting industry down. And that's not great for British industry if we were telling all our customers we can't supply them.
Well, Robert is, of course, in the studio for his Peston programme where he's been recording. That, Robert, is a pretty stark assessment from a man who should know better than most.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's one of the most important players in the market, both as a buyer and a seller of energy. And what he points to is inadequate ability to store gas in the UK. He points to our ability to store 10 days demand worth of gas compared to 5 times that in most of Europe, and also our dependence on shipments in tankers of liquefied gas. I mean, one of the reasons the price has gone up so high is because so much of that gas has gone over to Asia. We had an absolutely chilling winter not that long ago called the Beast from the East, and we almost ran out of gas then. And he says, straightforwardly, that if we get a repeat of that kind of cold snap, we could be in trouble. Maybe not the lights going out in our homes, but huge manufacturing businesses on which we are very dependent being told they can't get the power they need, which, as he points out, would be an economic disaster. The other relevant thing that he said is that he expects these very high prices that we are all paying to last at least through the winter. Maybe longer, but at least through the winter. So this cost of living crisis, which I've been banging on about for weeks, I'm afraid looks set to continue for some time.
OK, Robert, thank you very much indeed. And Robert's programme, of course, is coming up just after this. Now, to underline the problems in the gas industry, another 2 energy companies have gone under because of that rising price of gas on international wholesale markets that Robert was talking about. Pure Planet supplies more than 250,000 homes. Colorado, rather more modest, 15,000. We probably all know the drill by now, but the regulator, Ofgem, made clear once again that failed customers would be moved to another supplier. And sadly, we are not quite done yet. On supplies, two familiar names, Asda and Mars, say they are seeing delays to their deliveries because of the backlog at the UK's biggest container port at Felixstowe. Although bosses at the port say that backlog is shifting, they aren't going to allow any more empty containers to be left there for collection because of the space they take up. Okay, let's move on to a very different and frankly distressing story now, and to reports that have been coming through in the course of the evening from Norway of the deaths of a number of people at the hands of a man armed with a bow and arrows. The attack happened in the town of Königsberg near the capital Oslo. Juliet has been following the developments tonight. Look, this sounds really disturbing. What can you tell us?
Well, we know that this attack started around 6 o'clock Norwegian time. Apparently, the man started firing his bow and arrow in a supermarket, but then walked out into the street and just seemed to be picking people off at random, apparently. Now, the police have told us that they have detained him, he's in custody, and they don't believe anyone else is involved. But large areas of this town have been cordoned off, and we know that a national incident has been declared because they want to be certain that nothing else will follow up. And we also know that NRK, who are the national broadcaster for Norway, have said that a source has told them that at least 5 people were killed and others have been injured. The police won't confirm that, and neither will they comment on the motive, but it's likely to be stirring very unwelcome memories of that terrible attack by the right-wing extremist terrorist Anders Breivik back in 2011. And tonight, the Prime Minister went on television to address the whole nation, and he described it as a very cruel and a brutal attack.
OK, Juliet, sounds horrific. Thank you very much indeed. Now, they are some of our best-known and best-loved brands with names that sound wholesome, harmless and decidedly British. Cadbury's Dairy Milk Chocolate, Country Life Butter, Cravendale Milk, Cathedral City Cheddar. But they, and others we've discovered, are linked to the devastating deforestation of a South American savanna. Together with the Bureau of Investigative Journalism and Greenpeace Unearthed, we have established that milk that goes into these products is produced by British cows fed on soybeans grown on newly cleared land in Brazil. The problem is that legal certified soya is being mixed with uncertified beans.
The brands that live inside our fridges. Instantly recognisable dairy foods, they proudly wear their British farm credentials, and we consume them in vast quantities. All are connected to the fate of the Cerrado, this pristine Brazilian forest, species-rich and carbon dioxide absorbing, the world's most biodiverse savanna, is being destroyed to make cattle feed. This scarred and charred landscape 5,000 miles from the UK is feeding us.
Well, people aren't really aware of necessarily that their cheese has deforestation in it, and I think when people find that out, they're really shocked. And the reason why it matters is because these forests that are being destroyed are critically important for our climate and for kind of planetary health. If we don't have those forests, then our climate will tip into, kind of chaos.
An investigation by ITV News, the Bureau of Investigative Journalism and Greenpeace Unearthed has linked the destruction of vast tracts of Brazilian forest with UK dairy products through soya, the protein-rich cattle feed supplement. The UK imports around 2.6 million tonnes of soya for animal feed each year. That's the weight of more than 5,000 jumbo jets. Nearly 30% comes from Brazil, some of it from the Cerrado. We found Cargill, one of the world's largest food conglomerates, is sourcing soya from recently deforested land that in turn finds its way to the UK. British farmers believe they are buying sustainably sourced soya, but our investigation found it's a murky world lacking in transparency, where certified soya is mixed with beans from deforested farms.
No farmer wants to see the deforestation.
Land's End in Cornwall seems a world away from Brazil. Like dairy farms up and down the country, James Warren mixes soya into his cattle feed. He's worried about its impact on the environment.
The deforestation, we can't sustain that's not sustainable. And sustainability is what I want, is what everybody wants. But it means if we work together and to change, that's the way forward. Yeah. But it needs everybody, from the sort of from the source through to the supermarkets to the consumer, all working together.
Cow's milk ends up in a variety of foods, from chocolate to cheese and butter. There are likely to be more products, but these are the ones we've connected to deforestation. Their labels don't mention it. So we set up stall at Chelmsford's market and asked shoppers what they made of the connection between the products they buy and killing off tropical forests.
They're not thinking of the future, are they? They're only thinking of now.
What else am I going to give them? Toast, but then you can't have no butter. So then what do I feed my kids?
Would it worry you that we've been able to make a connection between these products and deforestation in Brazil?
Yes.
Why?
Because it won't affect me, it won't affect my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren and their children. There's a knock-on effect.
For many, the issue of deforestation stretches beyond illegal activity. More than half of the original Cerrado forest has been lost, and with private landowners here still permitted by the state to destroy forest for farming, I suggested to a senior official at the Brazilian Environment Ministry that they had a problem.
The Forest Code allows for rural landowners to suppress a certain amount of vegetation.
But you are still chopping down trees in order to grow soya, and that is unpalatable to many people.
It is occurring in areas where they are allowed to happen. This is my point.
So you have fundamentally, because it's law, you have no issue with it?
Yeah.
Dairy products are at the heart of our food chain, with milk production the driving force. But with cows fed on a diet linked to deforestation, we are eating into planet-saving forest to fulfil the human need for food.
And Rupert is here to talk about all this. Let's begin with what the companies have to say in response.
OK, well, look, we recognise a lot of those names, don't we? But the companies behind them are less familiar to us. Saputo, for example, they produce Cathedral City cheddar, Country Life butter and Clover spread. They say that from early next year, farms that supply their Davidstow creamery must source feed with a sustainable soy purchasing policy. They say by buying credits, they directly support producers who cultivate sustainably. Arla, they make Anchor butter, and Cravendale Milk say they're taking steps to manage soy responsibly and also buy credits. Mondelez own Cadbury's and say eliminating deforestation is critical. Their suppliers are expected to ensure 100% deforestation-free feed by 2023. And Cargill, they're the US-based food giant, say that they take this type of grievance against their suppliers very seriously, and if violations are found, they will take immediate action.
Look, these are all household names. We're all buying and consuming. What do you make of this in the round?
So a lot of this is about the supply chain issue, and actually Asda mentioned it. They say to us, they've told us they're committed to reducing food production linked to deforestation and working with milk producers to ensure all their soya is certified by 2025. But they point out the supply chain is extremely complex, and they're right. This is where it becomes very murky. It's a long way from Brazil to here, and there's a lot of elements in the chain that allow for certified and uncertified soya to get mixed together.
OK. Thank you very much indeed. Now, one of the reasons face-to-face GP appointments have been harder to come by in the last few months has been the ongoing need for social distancing, of course. But in the coming days, the Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, is expected to announce some restrictions will be lifted.
Life for Latifa came to an abrupt end in February. She died at just 27 after developing an aggressive form of cancer. It was misdiagnosed after numerous phone consultations with her GP. Her grieving mother thinks she may still be alive if she'd been seen face to face.
She may not have been here. She may have lived a few months, few years. We'll never know. We'll never know now. But there was just that little chance if they'd have seen her, we could have been in a different place right now.
Before the pandemic, around 80% of consultations in England were in person. That fell to just over half at the height of the third national lockdown. But latest figures show it's only risen by 4 percentage points, despite restrictions ending. So bad, the government's now expected to announce measures to improve access to GPs and get more patients through the door.
Social distancing guidance means fewer patients can sit in the waiting room, and a few weeks ago the government relaxed such rules in hospitals so more people can be seen. But if the government, as it's expected to do, makes similar changes in surgeries, will it make any difference at all?
We would love to see patients face to face. That's how we always operated. It's what we're used to. That's an easier way of managing patients. But actually, going back to the previous model is not going to help that situation, and actually probably will see longer waiting times for patients.
And new funding, doctors have been told, is coming for winter, will, they say, only make life harder for them.
GP practice teams already have significant burdens that they're carrying, many targets that we're expected to hit, many reports and audits that we're expected to do, and none of that will be taken away from GP teams. And in addition, they'll be expected to jump through further hoops to secure additional funding to support their practices to enable them to see more patients.
There's no doubt measures to improve conditions for patients and doctors will be welcome. The question is whether it really works in practice. Emily Morgan, News at 10.
Now, one critic has called it gripping but gruesome, and now Netflix has another huge international hit on its hand that's already outstripped the instant popularity of Bridgerton, the Regency and romance, and quite a bit else period drama. 111 million people watched the South Korean survival series Squid Game in the first 4 weeks of its release. Netflix has already changed the viewing habits of those millions. Now it's breaking down barriers around foreign language dramas and films.
Its success has been as eye-watering as some of its scenes. Squid Game is not for the faint-hearted. But it has kept audiences captivated with its Korean charm.
Squid Game has reached 111 million account at launch, making it our biggest ever title for Netflix and the first title to surpass 100 million accounts streaming the show.
The story follows a divorced father and gambling addict being targeted by loan sharks. He is lured to a secret location where hundreds of debt-ridden people play a series of children's games. Win, you go home rich. Lose, and you die. Fans in South Korea are going mad for the candy featured in one of the deadly rounds.
저희 나라가 뭔가 콘텐츠나 작품을 좀 잘 만드는 이제 나라로 좀 평가받고 있는 게 아닌가.
오셨어요. The Oscar-winning film Parasite helped put K-drama in the spotlight. It raised the profile of the distinctive script writing, culture and characters.
I think we're definitely seeing a rise in what Korea has to offer, culturally speaking. I mean, we've had films like Parasite, you know, the pop band BTS, people really interested in seeing what this country can offer us, and I think Squid Game is just the latest.
In China, where Netflix is not even available, they are cashing in on the craze. The famous wholesale factories of Yiwu have gone into overdrive, producing everything from costumes to toys to masks. With Halloween just a few weeks away, this mould maker has been churning out up to 40,000 a day.
This is already proving to be the most popular mask they have ever made. They started work on it just 3 days after the series premiered, and most of what they're selling is being shipped to Korea itself and the United States.
It took a decade to write, but just 10 days for 9 truly terrifying and at times touching episodes to become Netflix's #1 show in the world. Debbie Edward, News at 10, Yiwu.
Now, the career of Sir Lenny Henry reads something like a novel itself, from New Faces, remember that? Through Tiswas, comic relief to critically acclaimed Shakespeare. Now Sir Lenny has written a story of his own, out tomorrow, his first for children. It's about a boy who survives bullying to become a superhero. Sir Lenny told us he wrote it because when he was growing up, there just weren't any books featuring people who looked like him.
They all went, woohoo!
Even for a seasoned performer like him, this is a tough audience.
And they all sang, for he's a jolly good fellow, and happy birthday, dear Tundy.
The children of St Barnabas Primary in London are being given a preview of a book about a superhero boy that Lenny Henry would have dreamt up as a 12-year-old.
Why did you write this book?
I wrote this book because when I was your age, There were no books that had people like me in them, so nobody that was black or came from Jamaica or anything like that.
Why do you look a bit different from this picture?
Because one day I sneezed and all my hair came out.
In his story, illustrated by Keenan Farrell, the hero Tundi is black, adopted, and can sprout wings to take on the bullies.
And he also learns how to make friends and how to stand up for himself at school. And these things are important to know and to learn about. And it took me ages to learn how to stick up for myself with the bullies. I was racially abused for a period at school for quite a long time, and I had to learn how to defend myself with jokes and with humour.
But what difference would it have made then had you read about Tundi when you were a little boy at school?
If I'd read a story about a kid called Tundi at my school, it would have made me go, I want to be a superhero too.
His love of reading as a child came from visiting the local library, he says, encouraged by his aunt. Every child should have access to books.
Libraries need to be supported in our communities. Don't shut them down, open them up. Their access to computers, to storytelling, to creativity, to people who know stuff. And our communities need people who know stuff. And our kids need to be able to approach people who know stuff and say, where do I get a book about? Where do I find a story about? How do I find out a story about my origins? This is what libraries are for. And to close them down just seems to be a big mistake to me. You're 7. Wow, you look as big as the 9-year-olds.
Diversity in children's books is increasing. We just need more, he says.
If you read about a superhero or a black athlete or a brown mathematician or a director or Ava DuVernay or Trevor McDonald or Norman Beaton, when you read about these people and you're a little kid, you go, well, I want to be on the news, and say good night from me. Thank you.
Nina Nanar, News at 10 in central London.
The great Lenny Henry. Finally, there isn't much in space that Captain James T. Kirk of Star Trek's USS Enterprise hasn't seen, but the actor who played him, the now 90-year-old William Shatner, got his first experience today on a 10-minute flying visit, which made him the oldest person in space. Safely back on Earth, he was emotional about what he'd seen, as his alter ego might have said. Captain's log, Stardate 95, 29.5. I have just had the most profound experience of my life.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to launch this rocket. Godspeed, New Shepard.
From the scrublands of Texas, William Shatner boldly went where no 90-year-old has ever gone before. Ringing the bell of the rocket ship, he was strapped in for a voyage of a lifetime.
Command engine start. 2, 1.
The actor who entertained a generation with his space adventures as Captain Kirk was now experiencing the real thing.
What a launch! We are on our way to Max Q, the first milestone here on its flight to space.
No description can equal this. The voyage reached a peak altitude of 65 miles.
This is nuts!
Giving the first-time astronauts both a stunning view of Earth and the thrill of being weightless. Then, just a little over 10 minutes after launch, and the capsule came back to Earth with a bump. Jeff Bezos, the founder of Blue Origin, was there to greet Shatner as he emerged.
Captain Kirk himself, the great William Shatner.
The actor almost lost for words as he described how much this experience meant to him.
What you have given me is the most profound experience I can imagine. I'm so filled with emotion about what just happened. It's extraordinary, extraordinary. I hope I never recover from this.
Space, the final frontier.
The 1960s TV show made Captain Kirk and his Starship Enterprise a franchise that defined an era. Now William Shatner himself has breached that final frontier.
Thank you. You're amazing.
Calling today's voyage a symbol of the enormity of life. Robert Moore, News at 10, Washington.
What a brilliant story. That's it. Good night. Thanks for watching.
this way. I can't survive, can't stay alive without your love.
Hello? Calling all Big Mac fans. The double Big Mac